Welcome once again to New Media Lab. Today's guest is award-winning podcaster Aaron Peterson. Before we get to the interview, let me introduce myself. I'm your host, Robert Southgate, and I am so thrilled that you have decided to join me here. Rather than run through a list of my social media accounts, I want to send you to one convenient place. Go to Linktree, that's linktr.ee/New Media Lab to get all the links right at your fingertips. I've also included links to the various podcatchers that New Media Lab is on, which makes subscribing to the show incredibly easy. Plus, if you want to share it with other people, it has their podcatchers in there so they don't have to search for the show. It's super convenient. I'll put the link in the show notes for you. You can find the link to the New Media Lab Patreon page there as well. At the Patreon page, you can directly support this show and help keep us going. We have big plans for the future, but we can't do it without some money flowing in here. Every month, I share Patreon-only content, like Aaron's answer to how he monetizes his podcast, just for the patrons. Please go to patreon.com/New Media Lab and choose your tier, or click on it from the link tree. It's a great way to support the show and to help keep the lights on here at Southgate Media Group. A show like this is best when the audience and host are engaged with each other. In other words, get into conversation with me, either through email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, or any place else you can find me. The email for this show is southgatesmallbusiness@gmail.com. Send me your questions and comments, and I promise I'll respond. Our network's website is southgatemediagroup.com, where you can find this, as well as over 100 other podcasts, plus blogs, videos, and a lot more. Finally, follow our nearest endeavor on Twitter @IndiePodcastProject, and be sure to use the hashtag #SupportIndiePodcasts when posting your own shows or sharing anything podcast related. All these links will be on our link tree. Once again, that's linktr.ee/New Media Lab. And I swear, they're not paying me to say this. I just love this tool. Okay, that's enough business. Let's get to Aaron Peterson's interview. Aaron, can you describe your podcast?
Sure. The Hollywood Outsider is a podcast I started many moons ago, 2011. I used to be I still am a film critic, but I hosted my own website for a long time where you did the typical film news and that sort of thing. And we got away from that because it was just, there's too many of them at that point. Ain't It Cool News kind of redefined that and took it over. So just kind of stepped away for a few years. And then I realized that, you know what, the podcast thing was starting to be a big deal. So what I did was I got with some friends and decided to put together a show that focuses on movies and television called The Hollywood Outsider, where we would look at it from more of a fan's point of view. Now, I know right now there's about 1 billion of them, but when we started, there weren't that many. Most film and television podcasts that were out there were very, I don't know what the right word, snobbish, pretentious. I mean, really, it was very harshly critical to almost every film that wasn't an art film. And I really wanted a representation of film fans. You and I, people that like all kinds of movies, not just a certain kind. Blockbusters, art films, genre pieces, whatever it is. So that's what the podcast, we have a topic every week that's different. And we also have reviews of every kind of movie. And we touch a little bit on news and other stuff. It's a variety show. There's a lot of stuff in each episode.
If it's a variety show, does that make you Sonny or Cher?
I'm Cher. Okay. 100% Cher.
That's what I thought. So when did you start? I want you to answer this two ways. When did you start podcasting, and when did Hollywood Outsiders start? Because they may be two different answers.
Oh, yeah. Well, they are. So originally got into it. My buddy Scott wanted to do a gaming podcast and called the Official Thread podcast. And he needed someone to help him with the technical stuff because he didn't understand it. And he didn't know how to understand it. So I've worked in IT. I've been in IT, so I understand the technical side of it. And I got involved in it with him in that respect. And I started doing a little podcasting on his show. And then eventually I just spun it off from that. I'm like, I just took off from that point. So that would be 2000. I want to say late 2010, early 2011, and the Hollywood Outsider started in July of 2011.
Are you a celebrity?
No.
Is there anyone associated with the show that is a celebrity, like a co-host or anything?
That is a celebrity? No, we're all independent. I have zero desire to be a celebrity. I do podcasts because I enjoy it. That's just the only reason.
Do you think gaining audience today is the same as when you started?
No, not even close.
Can you elaborate on the difference?
Yeah, I can. Absolutely. I can elaborate. A lot of what has taken a hit out of shows like my own and other podcasts are celebrities. Everybody wants their own show. I mean, everybody thinks they are a celebrity, so they decide they're going to have a podcast. So oversaturation. You have too many guys that are just there's too many choices. Number one, it's hard for people to find your show. Because of Apple, you have to limit exactly how many descriptors you can even have about what your show is. So unless you completely rebrand yourself, it's hard for people to even find you. But celebrities are like the biggest thing because they come in, they get the big dollars behind them, they get the ad revenue, they get they walk at the door, already hitting a home run before they've even gotten a chance to swing, where the rest of us are kind of, we've been fighting on the mound for a lot of years. Yeah, I use a sports reference. And so it's just different. There's too many shows, too many celebrities, too many people that I honestly don't think are very good podcasters. And I don't mean that to sound, pretentious myself. Just because you have a name doesn't mean that you have a good show. And most of them show up, do their thing, and don't really care to get better. There are exceptions. Dax Shepard is one where he came in and his show was not very good, I didn't think. But he seems to have taken advice and criticism and applied it to make it a better podcast, which I respect that. At least he's somebody who is a celebrity and taking it seriously. Unfortunately, many people don't.
Hence one of the reasons I'm doing this paper.
Yeah.
So what are 3 key things that you've done to grow your audience?
Well, at its height, we really did a ton of promotion, Facebook, Twitter, that sort of thing. Word of mouth was very high. I'll be honest, our biggest thing has been word of mouth. We introduced an interactive component to our show way back in the day, which was a great help. It was called What's This Movie? And basically play a very short movie clip. People write in and guess what the movie is. And it got a lot of interaction, got people talking about the show. They would share it on social media, that sort of thing. That was one. We started a Facebook group super late in the game. We should have started it from the beginning, but we didn't know what we were doing. But we started one late, and now I think we're over 1,000 members. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start as late as we did, it's only been going for like a year and a half. I think that's doing pretty well. That's 2. I started doing side podcasts, like podcasts that I wasn't as passionate about. Like I did 24 Live Another Podcast, which is defunct now, obviously. 24 is gone. But I did Blacklist Exposed, and I did Beyond Westworld, which are 2 completely separate entities. And I did those because I knew that they would have a concentrated audience that are very similar to the Hollywood Outsider. So therefore, those listeners would sample it. And because they're so concentrated and focused, they were also more interested in film and television, which is what Hollywood Outsider focuses on. So a lot of them would come over and sample it. And it did help quite a bit.
You mentioned you started your Facebook group like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
You had a Facebook page before that, and then you added a group. Do you see a benefit to having groups as opposed to Facebook pages?
Well, the page used to be really beneficial. I think we're still over 7,000 likes or something like that, which is good. I mean, it's not great. It's not it's not sword and scale or anything, but it's pretty good. But I found far more interaction in the group. I find groups much more beneficial. Facebook has really added a lot of algorithms that unless you have constant conversation in your pages, nobody's even going to find it. Whereas groups, I find you get much better conversation and you get just more people that really want to talk about whatever your topic is.
What are 3 key social media practices that you either use or would recommend?
Key ones. Hashtag your posts so people can find them easy. Be regular. Don't make sure you have a dutiful schedule. Make sure it's the same time every week so people know when to look for things. And encourage people to share your podcast.
Now, when you said make sure it's a dutiful schedule, are you talking just the podcast, or do you have a strategy with a schedule for social media posting?
With social media, I feel like if you're not active every day, at least several times a day, people will forget about you. And not only that, but on Facebook, you will not even be present in the algorithm. So you have to be consistent. You can schedule, these days you can schedule everything. You can schedule everything, like 4 or 5 posts a day is plenty.
Great. And what social media platforms do you use, and do you just tie them together so that you're using the exact same content on each one, or is it different?
No, they're tied together. Facebook and Twitter. Used to use Google Plus. That was pointless. That never went anywhere. And now I think it's defunct itself now. Use Instagram a little bit, but honestly, I just don't know how to master it. I'm not good with pictures.
What is the secret to your podcast success?
Chemistry. It's always been chemistry. It's been whoever I'm doing it with, their passion for the topic and our chemistry as a team. I really believe we've done most of our success from word of mouth. I haven't paid for anything. We're in a very, very competitive. We're probably the most competitive. Well, next to true crime. Next to true crime, I think we're probably the most competitive podcast categories, TV and film. And we still stay consistent. We have good chemistry, and we make sure that we have a decent product. I hate to use the word product, but it is.
So what do you think the next big thing in podcasting is?
The next big thing in podcasting, I think true crime has got to be exhausted at this point, right? So I feel like audio dramas or audio comedies, they haven't really taken off to the level I think they're capable of. We've heard a lot of great content over the last few years. We're Alive is a great example. Wolverine for Stitcher Premium was a really good example. I think that is a niche that's just waiting to explode.
On every episode, I try to come away with 3 takeaways. Aaron had so many, but I found 3 ideas that he kept coming back to. Word of mouth is incredibly important. It's how they grew their show. Stick to a schedule. It's interesting, his thoughts on this, how it's not just the podcast, but social media and everything. And pick projects that will drive interest to your main podcast. I loved that idea. It's really changed how I'm thinking about all the shows that I'm on. So what are your takeaways? What did Aaron say that affected your business and your content creation going forward? Share your thoughts on the Facebook thread for this episode. I would love to read your insights. Make sure to follow Aaron and his shows on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Find his shows on your favorite podcast app, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, whatever. Be sure to subscribe and give excellent reviews to Aaron's podcasts. Hollywood Outsider, Remake This Movie Right, The Blacklist Exposed, and Beyond Westworld. And while you're at it, please subscribe to New Media Lab with Robert Southgate wherever you listen to podcasts. You can email the show at southgatesmallbusiness@gmail.com. New Media Lab is on Facebook. Simply search for @NewMediaLabShow. Our network's website is southgatemediagroup.com, where you can find this, as well as over 100 other podcasts, plus blogs, videos, information about our live events, some of our new projects that are about to launch, and so much more. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Twitter @RSouthgate and on Instagram @RobSouthgate. Support this show and get awesome extra content by becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/newmedialab and choose your tier. As little as $1 a month will make a big difference to us. It's not going to hurt you. So please, if you love the show, support us. Finally, please rate and review this show on whatever service you subscribe to podcasts on. It really helps others find the show, and it tells me if you like what I'm doing here. You can find New Media Lab on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and hopefully anywhere else that distributes podcasts. If you can't find us, let me know, and I will rectify that situation. All this plus more links will be in the show notes and on our website, so don't worry if you didn't have a pen to write it all down. Thanks again to Aaron for helping with my thesis and for being such an incredible guest. That's it for this week, everyone. The next episode of New Media Lab will drop on Thursday. Until then, get out there and create something.